Good evening. Once a year, we dedicate a very special evening to honor the best among us for all they do to advance our profession and the enterprises they serve. This evening, we will honor two people who have changed many lives for the better in profound and meaningful ways. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsors. This evening would not be possible without their generous support. Our sponsors for this evening allow us to continue honoring those among us who make the greatest contributions to our profession. We also thank Public Relay, our title sponsor. Thank you, Eric. And now I would like to take a moment to remember our four colleagues who have passed away since our last annual conference. Bruce Harrison. Bruce was a pioneer in environmental communications who served as the first executive director of Page. He founded his Washington-based consultancy at the dawn of the environmental movement in 1973 and authored 3 books on environmental communications. In his later years, Bruce taught a graduate class in leadership at Georgetown University with Page member Judith Mulberg. They are the co-authors of How Leaders Communicate, How Communicators Lead, a textbook now used in university graduate communication studies. It was Bill Nielsen who, as chair of Page in 1997, hired Bruce as our first part-time executive director. Roger Bolton always says that the work is built on the incredibly solid foundation that was laid with such care by Bruce. Bruce was a progressive thinker, always looking for new and better. In fact, he was the first to stand up at a Page conference to advise that we drop the formal Arthur W. Page Society name and refer to ourselves as just Page as we point to a more dynamic future. It took us a few years, but we ultimately followed the good advice. Bruce received more honors than we have time to mention, but 2 worth noting are the Page Distinguished Service Award in 2009 and being named in 2000 by PR Week one of the 100 most influential public relations professionals of the 21st century. Bruce was widely acclaimed to be one of the nicest people that any one of us ever knew. Always a kind word and an open ear. He made each of us feel special. Diane Gage Lofgren. Diane was CCO of Kaiser Permanente for 8 years. I was born there, by the way. She also was SVP of Marketing and Communications and later CMO at Sharp Healthcare, the leading hospital system in San Diego. For Page, Diane was a valued member of the Board of Trustees, and she chaired the membership committee with distinction for many years. She also served on the board of PRSA. In her Page leadership roles, Diane was engaged, active, and determined to make a difference. She was always cheerful and looking for ways to get things done. Diane was also incredibly well-rounded. She was the author of 9 books and scores of magazine articles on personal and business relationships. One of her most popular books with co-author Margaret Bola was Women I Want to Grow Old With, a book designed to help women be intentional about making and sustaining female relationships. Sally Benjamin Young remembers Diane. Diane and I had first bonded over our mutual decades-long commitment to our careers in healthcare, but I was quickly struck by her passion for the communications profession, for the organizations where she worked, and as a mentor. She led with a strong sense of values and lived as a strong champion of others, especially women. Kathleen Kelly. Kathleen Kelly taught at the University of Florida for many years, including 3 as chair of the Public Relations Department. She was widely recognized as the leading authority on fundraising and wrote 2 award-winning books, including the first academic textbook on the subject, Effective Fundraising Management. Kathleen served as co-chair with Diane of the Page Membership Committee, and it was Kathleen who created the nonprofit membership category, which has enriched our community with so many leaders from foundations and associations. Kathleen received 3 of the highest awards in public relations teaching and research: the 2004 Outstanding Educator Award from PRSA, the 1999 Behavioral Science Prize from the PRSA Foundation, and the 1995 Pathfinder Award from IPR. Page member Rita Menn said, Kathleen was a master teacher, a fabulous scholar, and an internationally recognized thought leader. She was an amazing human being with a kind and most generous heart. She made such a huge and profound impact on the PR profession and thousands of students and mentees' lives. Judy Van Slyke Turk. Judy served as Dean of the College of Journalism and Mass Communications at the University of South Carolina. In a long and distinguished career, Judy also led programs at Virginia Commonwealth University and Kent State University. She was founding dean of the College of Communications and Media Sciences at Zayed University, the first women's college in the United Arab Emirates. Judy also was a leader in strengthening public relations education through her service as president of the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communications, and as co-chair of the Commission on Public Relations Education. In 2005, she received the Pathfinder Award from the Institute for Public Relations, and in 2013, she won the Bruce Berger Educator Mentor Award from the Planck Center. Page member Maria Russell remembers Judy. Judy was the ultimate mentor. She gave generously of her time, experience, and insights to so many, especially to women at a time when the glass ceiling above both corporate America and academia seemed reinforced with steel. May I ask you to observe a moment of silence in memory of our colleagues. Thank you. The 2 honors we will present this evening are the Distinguished Service and the Hall of Fame. The Distinguished Service Award is specifically for service to the profession. It honors women and men who have given selflessly of their time and talents to advance the role of corporate communications and public relations in business and society. They do this through research, writing, teaching, and service to others. They often are active in serving industry organizations like PAGE, IPR, the Seminar, and others. They are leaders who have shaped our profession, honored its ethics and practices, and increased its influence. We are very fortunate to have 8 previous winners of the Distinguished Service Award with us this evening. Actually, it's 5. I would like to ask them to stand, please, and to be recognized. And please remain standing until all have been introduced. Amer Hines. Where's Amer? Merrill McDonald. Tom Martin. Jim O'Rourke. And Don Wright. Thank you, and please be seated. If the Distinguished Service Award is about service to the profession, the Hall of Fame honors a lifetime of leadership in the profession. The inductees have had a significant impact on the enterprises they have served or counseled, not only through communication strategy, but on business strategy and policy as well. They are leaders in the mold of Arthur W. Page, who was the first senior public relations executive to wield such influence on the course and fate of the enterprise he served. We have, I have to count this one now, 3. Thank you, Roger. We have 3 members of the Page Hall of Fame here this evening. Please stand and remain standing until all have been introduced. Nick Ashew. Marjorie Krause. And Merrill McDonald. Thank you, and please be seated. I would like to thank the co-chairs, Bill Nielsen and Merrill McDonald, and the members of the Honors Committee, Jean Allen, Ann Berkelou, Roger Bolton, Peter DeBressini, Dave Drobus, Tracy Faulkner, Ryder Gariam, Amer Hines, Marjorie Krause, Sandra McLeod, Jim Murphy, John Anoda, and Don Wright. I'm in there too, but it just seems weird to thank myself. All right. The committee appreciates the nominations it receives from the membership. It engages in a thorough, and I can tell you it's thorough, and deliberative process, examining and evaluating the nominee contributions to the profession and to their enterprises. Now, it is my privilege to introduce to you this year's recipient of the Distinguished Service Award, Dr. Rochelle Ford. Rochelle is well known and widely respected as a leader in the academic community and on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in our profession. She is a graduate of Howard University and received her PhD from Southern Illinois University. I just have to repeat that. Received her PhD from Southern Illinois University. She returned to Howard and spent 16 years as a professor at the School of Communications, where she served as the Associate Dean for Research and Academic Affairs for 6 years. She served for 4 years as a professor and the chair of the Public Relations Department at the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University. She has been Dean of the School of Communications at Elon University since 2018, with more than 80 faculty members and 1,400 undergraduate students and 6 undergraduate major programs of study. This award is being given to Rochelle in recognition of her amazing record of service in our profession. First, as a teacher and mentor of students. She is a remarkable leader whose programs have been recognized by PR Week as Education Program of the Year, both at Syracuse and at Elon. Page President Roger Bolton, who chairs the Elon School of Communication Advisory Board, had this to say: I served on the advisory board for 5 years before Rochelle arrived, and Elon was viewed as one of the leading communication schools in the country under the leadership of her predecessor. I knew and respected Rochelle as a Page member and a friend, but I was frankly astounded at the impact she had on that program from day one. She reorganized the academic departments to create more access for students, improved faculty mentoring, and strengthened academic programs and industry partnerships. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that she has become a critical advisor to University President Connie Book. Rochelle conducts research about diversity in advertising and public relations and has written a monthly column, Diversity Dimensions, for Public Relations Tactics. Rochelle has been a presenter at Page's Diverse Futures program, a week-long executive education program for high-potential diverse leaders in our profession, where her research-based insights into the experience of people of color in our profession has a profound impact on their lives. Rochelle led the creation of a new diversity and inclusion standard for the Accreditation Council for Education in Journalism and Mass Communications. She has been a member of the boards of the PRSA Foundation, PRSA, and the American Advertising Federation's Mosaic Center. She was inducted into the PR Week Hall of Fame in 2018. At Page, she has been the co-leader with Cheryl Battles of Pitney Bowes of the Page DE&I programs. They co-chair the Page DE&I Advisory Board, which is responsible for all of our programs designed to uplift people of color and advance justice in our profession. I am so honored to be able to present this award to Rochelle Ford for so many reasons. You know, I've often said that legacies are not about the things we build, but they're about the lives we touch along the way. And with that, Rochelle's legacy will absolutely live on forever. You've been amazing for our industry, and I just couldn't be more proud, Dr. Rochelle Ford, to present you with this award. And so now I am proud and privileged to present our Distinguished Service Award to Dr. Rochelle Ford.
Oh, thank you. I think first I have to acknowledge also my students who are here in the room. I have 5 students who have been volunteering, traveled up from Elon, North Carolina, to participate. Thank you so much, Paige, and particularly thank you, Shelley Spector, for, I understand, helping to write the nomination for me. But also, I appreciate your friendship, and I also appreciate your willingness to publish the memoir of Ofield Dukes, who you all will meet later. So thank you to the Museum of Public Relations for that. And also thank you to Dr. Reverend Unia Pettis, who co-edited Mr. Dukes' autobiography. And I also want to thank the awards committee and the Page trustees for this recognition. Indeed, it is really a humbling experience, and it caused me to reflect about part of my personal journey. And although I joined Page in 2014, it's kind of funny that I was actually nominated for Page back in 2008. I wasn't inducted then, and I think I'd just become a associate professor, and I think I was kind of like a voice crying out in the wilderness, diversify our industry. And I don't think that many people wanted to hear my voice back in the early 2000s, because indeed, the speeches that I gave, even as a master's student at University of Maryland, that I gave at Southern Illinois University, and in fact, even the speeches I gave at PRSSA in the early 1990s are the exact same speeches I give today. How little our industry has actually changed. But we had 2020 and a racial reckoning that opened up a lot of eyes that have been blind. So as you heard in the introduction, that I have dedicated much of my life's work to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion within our communications industry. And doing this work really requires me to be my authentic self, to be a bit vulnerable as I attempt to bring my whole self to my research, teaching, and service to the profession. Therefore, being my authentic whole self, I must begin my remarks by giving honor to the Lord, my Savior, Jesus Christ, who has provided my foundation, my North Star on how I want to live my life and navigate this world. My identity and my worldview are grounded in my faith. The other piece of my identity that can't be denied is that being of a mother. My 3 children give me such hope and motivation and joy that can't be expressed with words. And I'm so thankful that tonight I have my son Malik Larkin with me tonight. He's a graduating graphic art and design major at Maryland Institute and College of Art, MICA, here in Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm proud of you, Malik. I'm proud of the man that you have become. You demonstrate authenticity, inclusion, entrepreneurship, creativity, and faith. Continue to walk in your truth and be in service. Tonight, colleagues, I urge you to walk in your truth and to continue to be in service to others. Walking in truth means understanding the past. The past 20 years, in fact, 20 years of my life, I spent at Howard University as a student and then as a professor. And Howard was founded by an act of Congress just after the Civil War to educate all free people. In fact, the university's original seal had it featured an indigenous person of the United States, whom we would now call a Native American, formerly enslaved people of the United States, who we now call African Americans or Black Americans, and a woman. Supposedly all free, yet in 1867, none of these people were truly free. And in fact, the reality today is that there are systems and structures of inequality that exist today. And today, those inequalities still have a lasting effect on Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. You may have heard the term BIPOC. However, like in 1867, the white and black founders of the university and the students of Howard University had hope, a mission of truth and service, and a vision to use education, political influence, and other tools to break down those barriers and change systems. And today, we as Page members, professional communicators who are leaders nationally and globally of organizations of influence, giving counsel to the chief executive officers of these organizations, we have an obligation to contribute, to continue to break down these systems and structures of inequality that have impeded the progress of disenfranchised people domestically and globally. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just a social justice issue. It is also an economic imperative and a democratic imperative. Listening and participating in these table talks that we had today throughout this conference, it gives me a bit of hope, because for the first time I've been out of professional organizations where chief communication officers, be you forced into this conversation by the crisis of 2020, whatever it might be, you're thinking about it now. And you have to keep the light on this issue to make systemic change. We must all speak truth to power and be of service to others. We must all be diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders. In doing so, it's a marathon journey. My DEI journey really began when I was in elementary school, back in Gahanna, Ohio. If you can say banana, you can say Gahanna. Thank you. I discovered in elementary school that I was a different race than most of my classmates. Actually, all of my classmates until second grade were all white. And that my race, at times, more times than I wish, would lead me to be excluded from activities and conversations. However, I had a role model, my big brother, Ray. Ray was a leader in this very white suburban community of Columbus, Ohio. He was his high school students' council president. He chose to go to a historically black college, St. Augustine's University College in North Carolina, where he became the student government president there too. He went on to law school at West Virginia University and became an Army JAG officer. He exuded confidence. He stood up for justice, for equality, for diversity and inclusion, even when he was the only one. And his daughter, Reagan, is here tonight. She's a current Howard University law student, and I'm so proud of the woman that you continue to become, Reagan. There's Reagan. Each of us need role models and examples on how to navigate lonely places and excel. Page members, find a way to be a role model to ensure that your team members have access to role models. Like my brother and my dad and my mom and so many others, I had to learn not to let other people's ignorance deter me in my journey and my mission for diversity, equity, and inclusion, even when I was scared. For example, in high school, after I did a presentation about Martin Luther King Jr. on the morning announcements, and in fact, we played the song by U2, Pride, otherwise known as In the Name of Love. Someone called my house that night saying, "Nigger, don't come to school tomorrow." Well, I didn't let that deter me. I used that hatred that was spewed towards me to motivate me and propel me forward. I came back to school, and again, this is the late 1980s, with my Black by Popular Demand shirt on, and I began to speak truth to power and to serve my school. I share this story because talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, educating others, advocating for it may make you unpopular. It will make you uncomfortable, particularly as the attention that DE&I receives begins to wane. My hope, colleagues, is that the criticism and that the fear that it may make you feel will only strengthen your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. While me being Black, I am Black and proud to be Black, I'm personally committed to DE&I. But being Black didn't automatically make me a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. I, as a Black person, have continued to learn and grow, and I'm still learning and growing today. Honestly, it really wasn't until I came to Howard University as a student that I discovered the beauty of the diversity within the African American communities and the wider Black diaspora. I realized how small my view of diversity was before I came to Howard. I learned that Black people are not monolithic. I also became a lot more humble as I learned that I wasn't exceptional. I learned that Black people are brilliant, and at Howard, I was surrounded by Black excellence, ridiculously smart students. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, scientists, educators, dentists, ministers, business leaders, social workers, and other communicators. I learned that we need to speak truth to power and how to speak truth to power. I learned that we must create and change within systems, but I also learned how to operate with dignity and pride and demand respect even within white spaces. But I also learned that we must create new systems of support and opportunity for Black people by Black people. It's a both and proposition. Colleagues, I urge you not to look only for the super exceptional racial and ethnic minorities for your positions. Doing so, by looking for only the exceptional, you actually have the same narrow-mindedness that I had when I entered Howard University. The narrow-mindedness that will tell you that minorities in general are unqualified. Use the same standards that you use for all candidates. There is diverse talent out there, qualified in a variety of ways. You just have to open your eyes and look. Fish where the fish are. And boy, can you fish at Howard. There at Howard, I was nurtured by Dr. Barbara Hines, a Caucasian, blonde hair and blue-eyed woman from Texas. She dedicated her life to educating predominantly Black students to excel in journalism, advertising, and public relations. She was often the only white woman in the room of Black people, and also one of the few white women advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion within our industry. Thank you, Dr. Hines, for introducing me to Kathleen Kelly, a fellow Page member who passed away this year, as you just heard. She, along with Tom Martin, co-sponsored me in my membership to Page. Kathleen was so kind to me as I became a member, and she also advocated for me to serve on the Accrediting Council for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication, where I advocated for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I challenge you, fellow Page members, to coach someone different than you. Allow yourself to be othered so that you can learn more about diversity, advocate for diversity, and advocate for your team. Doing so, you will further understand others' truths, and you will be of service to others in the industry. Also at Howard, I got to meet and be taught by I just gave you a doctorate, Connie Cannon Frazier, and she showed me grace. Grace when I said a microaggression to her when I commented about her being pregnant. If you want to ask her about that story, it's a very embarrassing story. I'm sure she would be happy to share that story with you tonight. She loves to tell this story. But the part of the story that is most important, it's a story of forgiveness and second chances. Because we all will have foot in the mouth disease. It's part of our diversity journey. But having those missteps gives you an opportunity to learn how to become more sensitive. And I've become more sensitive as I traveled this D&I journey. And I appreciate Connie traveling this journey with me, offering me opportunities to work on diversity and inclusion research projects that have helped her to advocate for diversity within the American Advertising Federation when she served as director of the Mosaic Center, the chief operating officer, and then acting CEO. She has been my ally, working alongside of me, and now she counsels chief executive officers, chief marketing officers, and other executives in their DE&I journey. Thank you, Connie, for being here and for your allyship and your lessons on grace. I challenge you, therefore, page members, to show grace when you or others make DE&I blunders, because we will. Be an ally to those who have been disenfranchised. Travel along with your colleagues to advocate for DE&I. As a young professor at Howard University, my dean, my boss, Dr. Jeanette Dates, who's also here tonight, invested in me. She provided funding and administrative support to Drs. Hines and myself and Connie and another colleague, Robin Thornhill, who's a former Washington Post executive turned educator, to host the first ever Inclusivity Conference back in 1999. This national conference brought together PRSA, AAF, and other executives to discuss diversity and inclusion. And we said back then that inclusion must happen before diversity could be fully realized. She saw my potential, Dr. Hines. She saw my potential and gave me stretch assignments. She paid for me to attend Harvard University's higher education leadership program, and she promoted me to her associate dean just 1 year after I had received my first academic promotion. Thank you, Dr. Dates, for providing systems, providing structures, and providing support for diversity. Colleagues, I urge you too then to invest in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Provide systems, structures, and support to diversify your teams and make them more inclusive. And then there was Ofield Dukes, my sponsor. Ofield was one of the most influential men inside the Beltway, a counselor to presidents, ambassadors, congressional leaders, activists, corporations, the Washington Bullets basketball team, and even entertainers like Prince. Ofield observed and took note of me when I didn't know that he was even doing so. For example, he learned that Betsy Ann Plank, who's also another page member who received the Distinguished Service Award, she had mentored me, but she had also awarded me her named PRSSA scholarship. Ofield spread the good news with others. In fact, in the most diplomatic way, Ofield explained the business case for diversity with a local rainmaker who owned a very influential agency, and that he told the agency leader that if he wanted to retain his competitive edge and influence in the chocolate city, which Washington, D.C. used to be called, is more like a chocolate chip now, but nevertheless, he said if he wanted to retain his level of influence, that the agency must diversify their team, and that they should start by hiring Miss Tillery, which was me. And they did. They hired me as their first non-white employee. Ofield sponsored me. Colleagues, I urge you to sponsor someone who is from a different race or ethnicity that is underrepresented in our industry. Allow your reputation to provide an opportunity for someone else. And after I graduated from Howard, I studied at University of Maryland. You didn't mention that. I'm a Terp. I'm a proud Terp. We were the #1 program in public relations at the time. Dr. Pettis, Dr. Hines, and Maybe there's some others might be here. Maybe anyone? Anyone else? Marilyn Turp? Yes, one, thank you. Wonderful, in the back. Okay. But I had the opportunity to study with Doctors Larissa Lori Grunig and Dr. James Grunig, Jim Grunig. And Jim is also a recipient of the Distinguished Service Award. And when discussing the excellence theory that they had developed along with other team of researchers, many of whom are also PAGE members now, the Grunigs allowed their very outspoken master students to challenge their thinking. Dr. Bailing Shaw, who's my ride or die PR bestie, along with our other classmates, urged and we encouraged the industry to investigate the role of culture, age, race, and other aspects of identity in the practice of communications management. Those conversations, as uncomfortable as they made Jim feel at times, advanced the body of knowledge in our profession and helped change the trajectory of research in our field. Colleagues, I urge you to challenge your ideas. Challenge your way of thinking and practicing, just like Jim and Lori did. Be open and evolve. We are all in this together, and we must share our ideas, the best practices and the worst practices, so our profession will live up to what we want it to be, what we are called for it to be. The time is now to speak truth to power, to be bold in our service. It is time for us as PAGE members to be our authentic and vulnerable selves, continuing on our diversity journey. It is time for us to be steadfast, to be a role model, a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, and an ally to someone who is different than you. We are the leaders. We must provide the systems, the structures, and the resources to activate diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of the team, as a business imperative, and as an illustration of our organization's corporate character. Thank you again for this Disservice Service Award. I will forever be your partner in diversity, equity, inclusion, truth, and service.
Congratulations again, Dr. Ford. You know, I had two thoughts while Dr. Ford was speaking. Well, maybe it was just one, which was she dropped the mic, or as my kids would say, the shit just got real. Now, we turn to the PAGE Hall of Fame inductee, Ofield Dukes, who passed away at the age of 79 in 2011. Now, let's be clear. Most of us never knew Ofield Dukes, and many of us had never heard of him. So why are we honoring him this evening? Our DSA award winner, Rochelle Ford, was one of Ofield's many mentees, as you've heard. And she was asked by him in his waning days to co-edit his autobiography along with Reverend Dr. Unia Pettis, a leading author and empowerment speaker, who is here with us this evening. The book was published by the PR Museum Press. Thank you, Shelley Spector. Shelley and Denise Hill, who teaches at Elon and chairs the Public Relations Industry Diversity Action Alliance, have done a lot of important work on the contributions to our profession from diverse professionals who were not in the traditional corporate communications roles. And our Honors Committee and Board of Trustees believe that it's time to recognize those contributions. Shelley, by the way, nominated Rochelle for her award. and Rochelle nominated Ofield for the Hall of Fame. We are grateful to both of you. So here's the point. Ofield Dukes was a senior public relations professional who had a huge impact on the institutions that he served. But because he was not privileged, his path to success was different. Nonetheless, his contribution to the world we now live in was immense. And his commitment to doing the right thing in the right way was inspiring. Ofield Dukes belongs in the pantheon of leaders who we have inducted into our Hall of Fame, and tonight we take that historic step. Ofield starts his autobiography with a touching story about his gratitude for what he considered to be a miracle upon being notified in 2001 that he had been awarded a PRSA Gold Anvil. I have to wonder what he would think tonight, knowing that he was being inducted into the Page Hall of Fame. Ofield was born in Alabama, the son of sharecroppers. His family moved to Detroit when he was 8 years old, and he grew up in the ghetto. But he found his way to Washington, D.C., where he worked with President Johnson and Vice President Humphrey and the leaders of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. He founded his own PR firm and had a hand in achieving tremendous progress for the organizations that he advised. Ofield helped to organize the Congressional Black Caucus. He convinced President Johnson to support Dr. Leon Sullivan's Opportunities Industrialization Centers in the U.S. budget, and later counseled Dr. Sullivan in his efforts to get the Sullivan Principles adopted by U.S.-based corporations to apply economic pressure that helped to end apartheid in South Africa. He co-chaired the successful effort to win congressional passage of the Washington, D.C. Home Rule legislation in 1973 and organized the inauguration of the first elected D.C. government in 100 years and became a kitchen cabinet advisor to the mayor. He planned and executed Stevie Wonder's march of 100,000 people on Washington in 1981 that generated momentum to make MLK Day a national holiday. In 1986, as a longtime advisor to Coretta Scott King, Dukes accompanied her on an historic visit to South Africa. There is so much more, which we will hear about in a few minutes. But first, let me say, in order to be inducted into the Page Hall of Fame, you need not have been a member of Page. We've inducted non-members before, but perhaps none like this. The only true requirement is that you must have been a senior strategic counselor to the organizations or clients that you served, and that counsel must have had a material impact on the work of those organizations. All of us in Page have a tremendous opportunity now to step up and make a significant contribution to our enterprises. Today, business has never been more relevant to creating value for society and advancing social justice. CCOs can be right at the heart of this revolutionary transformation, but only if we step up. Only if we meet the challenge of the day as Ofield Dukes did in his day. It is a great honor to me to be able to declare that Ofield Dukes is richly deserving of his place as our 2021 inductee into the Page Hall of Fame. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Robin Beaman, who will help us understand more about who Ofield Dukes really was. Robin is the founder and president of Beaman, Inc., a strategic communications firm. Robin was also a mentee of Ofield's, having studied under him at Howard University. She worked at the Capitol Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and at Black Entertainment Television before leading public relations for the Oprah Winfrey Show. Damn, girl. Okay. Robin?
Good evening, everyone. I am honored to be here to celebrate a great man who contributed so much to the world and our industry. Mr. Ofield Dukes. Mr. Ofield Dukes was eloquent, a masterful strategist, an elegant man, a visionary leader, and a dedicated father. He was PR royalty. And I know many of you may not know him, but he was a giant of a man who had a passion for public relations, for truth, and for excellence. He advised presidents and civil rights leaders and kings like you heard Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, President Lyndon B. Johnson, and Motown greats Stevie Wonder and Diana Ross. He also counseled Roots author Alex Haley, just to name a few. Oh, he left his mark on this world. Charlene shared many achievements. He advised every Democratic presidential candidate from 1969 to 2011. As you heard, he planned the rally at the National Mall, which helped make Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday. And he created an anti-apartheid campaign with Leo Sullivan, which led to 100 U.S. corporations withdrawing their operations from South Africa. He was also a key strategist behind the civil rights movement. And these are all really great things about Mr. Dukes, but what I remember most about him was who he was and what he stood for and how he generously poured into others. Like, that's his legacy. So Mr. Dukes was my favorite professor at Howard University. And I really was one of the first to go through that program, and I believe Mr. Dukes was very influential in helping to build that program. And me and thousands of students hung on his every word. We laid at his feet. He was just so amazing. And he was just a powerful storyteller, and he would tell these beautiful stories about life lessons through his own journey. He wanted us to win. Have you ever met anybody that just wanted you to be great, and they saw the greatness in you, and then you started seeing it in yourself? It's like, I can do that. But thousands of students felt that way. We can do that, Mr. Dukes. We're going to make you proud. So Mr. Dukes demanded excellence from his students every day. In his classroom, you had to be on time. There was no such thing as being late. And you had to be excellent in every project, every assignment, and every internship. He gave us what I believe are the tools in the playbook to be successful, sought-out PR executives. And that's a difference. When people start looking for you, you're something very special. So these were the rules of the game. You must have integrity. Be true to your values and never let anybody or anything make you waver from that. Stand up and know who you are. Be excellent in all things, not good. No, Mr. Dukes didn't know anything about being good. He was about being excellent, and he wanted that from you as well. Your credibility. Your credibility is all you have. That is your reputation. People have to trust you as a PR executive. So you better be a person of your word. Next is trustworthy. Always tell your clients the truth. And sometimes those are very, very hard conversations, but you have to have them if you're an excellent PR executive. And not only do you have to tell them the truth and have hard conversations, but you have to come to them with solutions. And then the last, stay calm and composed in all situations. I don't care if you're in the middle of a fire, your client wants to see you calm and composed. And they want to be able to look at you and trust that you can guide them through a crisis. So I thank Mr. Dukes for the foundation from which I built my career. He remained a wonderful mentor to me throughout my whole career, and he groomed me to manage public relations for 3 billionaires: Oprah Winfrey, Robert Johnson, and Sheila Johnson, who owned Black Entertainment Television. I wanted to be just like Mr. Dukes. I wanted to be respected like Mr. Dukes, and he actually inspired me to open my own PR firm, which I did. And last week, I celebrated 25 years of having my own firm. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dukes. Of counseling major corporations. So I want to share one last thing. There was a great love in Mr. Dukes' life beyond public relations, and that was his beautiful daughter, Roxy. Everyone knew who Roxy was, if you knew Mr. Dukes. She was the light of his life. And every holiday, we look forward to the newsletter that Mr. Dukes would send out to all of us about Roxy. It shared her adventures for the year, who she met, the celebrities, what she was doing in school, and her love for dance. We saw that very, very young in her life. She loved dance. And so I want to say that we loved you from afar, Roxy. And that this tonight was the first time I actually met Roxy, but I met her through the newsletter when she was a little girl, like a baby. And so I am so proud and honored to meet you. And I know your dad is very, very proud of you as a mother and as a wife and as a professional. So I could go on and on. I know Charlene and I have highlighted so many incredible things about Mr. Dukes, but I think it's time for you to hear directly from him. So we're grateful to Page member Carla Gower, who is the director of the Planck Center for Leadership in Public Relations at University of Alabama, for giving us permission to use this video from the Planck Legends and Leaders interview series.
First, I think we need to deal with the qualities of leadership, and it represents an individual's ability to know what he knows and to convince other people that he knows what he's doing. And leadership also requires a progressive vision and the ability of a person to be effective in communicating. Also, leadership really means producing results and having the ability to inspire others and to have confidence in one's ability to make prudent decisions. So when you take those qualities of leadership and apply them to public relations, they're very, very clear. And a person who has those qualities can be very effective, whether it's in public relations or any other industry. One is having a progressive and clear vision, and second is a strategic plan of action, and number three is being able to take the initiative and having the courage of one's convictions to proceed and to implement whatever plan or vision you have. And the last is being productive. Leadership really demands positive results. I remember when I was in Korea during that Korean conflict, and I spent 13 months there. And it was, for me, a period of introspection. And I read Socrates, who suggested that the first principle of life is knowing thyself. Then Aristotle said, be thyself, and Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. And for me, it was a matter of becoming intimately aware of who I was and having a sense of what I wanted to do in life. And I developed a vision. And it's important for a person to be very much aware of oneself, because many of us are introduced to ourselves by other people, and we go through life needing to be validated by other people. And when you know who you are, you have a sense of confidence in your ability to deal with all kinds of challenges. Remember when I was teaching as an adjunct at American University, I invited Michael Deaver to speak to one of my classes, and what he said about President Ronald Reagan, I think, was most compelling. He said that Mr. Reagan got up every morning and knew exactly who he was. And that's very, very important for young people in PR to be aware of who they are and what their assets and liabilities are, and to have a sense of confidence in their ability to deal with all problems and challenges. In 2001, Kathy Luton, then president of the Public Relations Society of America, called me the 1st of January and asked if I would be willing to chair the first task force on diversity for the Public Relations Society of America. That was 2001. And I accepted that challenge, and it involved reaching out, getting input from others, and then spending quite a bit of time developing a mission statement for the first time for PRSA in terms of diversity, and then developing realistic objectives. And then I spent quite a bit of time traveling tens of thousands of miles.
So now let's hear from several people who knew Ofield Dukes personally, beginning with Lori George Billingsley, the Global Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the Coca-Cola Company, who also chairs the board of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
When I first met Ofield Dukes, he was larger than life, a trailblazer, the godfather for blacks in public relations, a legend. He took me under his wing when I was a student at Howard University and agreed to be my mentor. However, he said he wouldn't meet with me until I developed a 5-year plan. That first meeting had such an impact on me that 5 years later, when we were reviewing it, all the goals had been met. He said that that was the power of having a plan, and I've done one ever since, just like he taught me. Mr. Dukes was more than a mentor. He was a teacher, coach, advisor, friend, and consummate professional. He left an indelible mark and duty to mentor others to ensure the development and advancement of people of color in the public relations field. The accomplishments that many people who look like me have achieved can be traced back to him. I'm thrilled that he's receiving this honor that's so well-deserved for the life he led and the path he left for all of us to follow.
And now, page member Tarad Neptune, the CCO of Medtronic.
My name is Tarad Neptune, and I have many fond memories of Ofield. The most notable is as an early career entrant in Washington, D.C., experienced him as the founder of the Black Public Relations Society, and was inspired at that time to see another face who looked like me. And we were certainly inspired by the role he was playing in convening others like me as well early in our career to help us understand the opportunities and the roles that were available to us. And then later on, as I grew in my career and took on broader, more significant roles both in agencies and in global brands, Ofield's name remained at the top of the Rolodex of almost every agency and brand that I was a part of for his reputation, the influence he brought, and his national and international prestige at helping us really navigate some of the most significant crises of the day.
Next, the Honorable Delano Lewis, former U.S. Ambassador to South Africa and former CEO of National Public Radio, who served with Ofield Dukes on the kitchen cabinet of the first elected mayor of Washington, D.C. in 100 years.
I spent over 35 years in Washington, D.C. I started as a lawyer with the Department of Justice, and that's when my paths crossed with Ofield Dukes. He was working with President Lyndon Johnson, and he was on the staff of Vice President Hubert Humphrey, working on the Civil Rights Bill of 1964 and Title VII of 1965. I left Justice and went to EEOC, and EEOC was Title VII and part of Ofield Dukes' legacy. Shortly thereafter, he started his own firm, Ofield Dukes and Associates, and was a PR success story because he knew government, he knew business, and he knew politics, particularly civil rights. He made the American system work for him, work for all people, and particularly people of color. Thank you.
Now we have page member Mike Fernandez, the CCO of Enbridge.
Ofield Dukes was an amazing public relations professional. People tend to put him in a box as somebody who dealt with civil rights and the civil rights movement, and he did that. But he was an amazing professional. He had clients that included people like RJR Nabisco, Sony Entertainment. His very first client was Motown. But he saw the breadth of public relations. He saw it as a world in which you not only did communications, you did government relations, you handled issues management. It was the whole ball of wax. In addition to that, he was very much committed as a student of leadership and how leadership played into issues making. And then in addition to that, he was a great believer in ethics and in values. And I saw that front and center when I was part of a rump group in the Senate to try and get Martin Luther King's birthday a federal holiday, and he masterminded that.
Finally, our DSA award winner, Rochelle Ford.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rochelle Ford, and I has always been called a student of Ofield, not because I had him in class, but because he mentored and he coached me, and I learned so much from him. In fact, he sponsored me to be a part of his teams working for the Clinton inauguration, working with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, participating in the Black Public Relations Society. And in fact, he told a boutique agency that was considered one of the rainmaker agencies that they had to hire me because their agency lacked any racial ethnic diversity. And they did. And as Ofield began to age, he actually entrusted me to co-edit his autobiography with Dr. Unia Pettis, who he also helped to obtain her first job working with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. There wasn't much in America that Ofield didn't touch, whether it was the Public Relations Society, teaching at Howard University, working in the halls of Congress and international governments, even sharing an office with Alex Haley. Ofield was a part of that. He was my mentor, my sponsor, and my coach.
So now let's end with Mr. Dukes again, this time with video provided by the History Makers, a nonprofit research and educational institution committed to preserving and making widely accessible the untold personal stories of both well-known and unsung African Americans. We're grateful to founder Juliana Richardson for making these clips available to us.
One of the things I didn't mention in addition to the passion to be excellent, the other thing that was so important to me was integrity. That I was intensely committed to the principle that nothing would ever force me to compromise my sense of integrity. Because in life, your reputation is the foundation for your success or your failure. And your reputation is like a whistle and its echo, and it's your shadow wherever you go.
And you want to be remembered for?
A guy who came along and tried hard to do his best and to have his success simply defined on the basis of the people he tried to help, and that if really it's my achievements should not be defined in terms of what I did, but my achievement should be determined in terms of how I was able to contribute to the achievements of other people.
So Ofield Dukes, my friend and mentor and professor, will long be remembered for how he was able to contribute to the achievement of others. He taught us that we all have the power to impact the world, that we all can change a life. So what will your legacy be? What will your legacy be? So today I charge you to give back, to pull somebody up, to help somebody in your corporation, to talk to students, and to make other people great. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful tribute to a great man. And I tell you, we're not supposed to cry at Page conferences, right? But this is like the second time in 2 days, so here we go. Now I would like to ask Ofield Dukes' daughter, Roxy Trapp Dukes Victorian, and her mother, Rosa Trapp Dale, to join me, Robin, Rochelle, and Roger on the stage to accept the award. Roxy is an amazingly talented dancer who has a BFA in theater and dance from Howard University. In addition, she holds a certificate in Shakespeare from the British Academy of Dramatic Arts at Oxford University. She has studied and choreographed and danced for prestigious companies in Washington, New York, England, and France. She is now a dance instructional and curriculum specialist for East Baton Rouge Parish School System and the founder and artistic director of Baton Rouge Hops and the Baton Rouge Hip Hop Festival. She is also an accomplished writer who created a series of monologues for the stage on gender, gentrification, and sexuality. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us.
Good evening. Wow. Well, so many of my talking points got covered because that's just how my dad is. I was going to come and speak of his integrity, and I was going to come speak of Socrates and Shakespeare and knowing thyself, but, you know, in my dad's fashion, he covered it all himself. So I'm going to take a moment and tell you some things that you may not know about my dad. You know, it's interesting Charlene and I, we just met, and she said, you know, you've accomplished so much, and you're so young. Are you an overachiever? Well, yeah. And I get that from my parents. It is their fault that I am an overachiever. But what you have heard from what I call Ofield's Army now is a mantra that he would recite to all of us all of the time. And that mantra centered on integrity and excellence and knowing who you are. You know, my dad, he reminded me one day that your first relationship is with yourself, and understanding yourself and knowing who that person is. If that is not a part of the equation, integrity can't be a part of the equation, because I don't know what I'll stand up or sit down for if I don't know who I am. And it's interesting to me, this moment is so bittersweet because as a child, I would be on the floor at meetings and running around backstage at events. And somehow all of this was seeping into my person. As I listened to you all speak about my dad, as I listened to Rochelle talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, words that I've heard all of my life, I began to understand some things. I began to understand why I fight the way I fight, why I fight for what I fight for. And it's interesting when you come from such extraordinary parents, it can be challenging to navigate your own way, to learn how to define your own greatness, how to step outside of their shadow and learn to shine on your own. I'll be honest, because I know I can in this room. My husband and my son are betting on whether I make it through this speech without tears. I'm not sure that I will. But my dad was really, really great at making every person he came into contact with feel like his best friend. He would answer that phone and he would say, "Hello, my dear, what can I help you with today? How can I assist you today?" He was a humble man of service, but he was also just my dad. He liked to eat peanut butter with his vanilla ice cream. He liked raisin bread toast with peanut butter and jelly. He loved to make a toast of orange juice because he didn't drink. He didn't curse, so I did it for him. And he spoke often about these mountaintop moments in his life, one of which was the birth of my son, my oldest, in the middle, Michael Dukes Victorian, who was very much like his grandfather. And I can tell you that standing here today, I believe that you are witnessing one of my mountaintop moments. I always wanted to represent my dad. I always wanted to be one of the Ofield Dukes and Associates. But I was a dancer. And I was kind of a firecracker, you know. So I had all of this want to serve and to help my community. I got all of that from them. But the way I did it, my methods were so avant-garde. Oh, and I remember I would come to my dad's office and I would rant and rave about some injustice. And he would say, "My dear, calm down. You have to indulge your rational self. Not so much of these emotions, Roxanne. I need you to think rationally." And I never thought that I would have the composure, the know-how to stand in a room like this one and speak on my dad without him being here. And I always wondered when he left whether I was really ready for him to go. You know that feeling when you lose someone and you say, "Oh, could we have had one more conversation? Could I have gotten one more thing?" But here I am today. I'm pretty sure I got everything he wanted me to. So I thank you for taking such a huge step in the industry of communications and public relations in recognizing my dad tonight. I realize that this is something that many of you have worked for years. And for that, I'm deeply, deeply appreciative. And Dad, I'm going to speak directly to you. I love you. I am so proud to be your daughter. I am so proud to be your legacy. And to those of you with children and without, I will give you a piece of advice. Know that your children, your students, your mentees, that we are always watching and that we are always listening. We don't miss the gems that you drop for us. And as we grow older, we start to hear ourselves speak as you've spoken and do as you have done. I take the company that I share this room with tonight very seriously, and I consider it a true blessing to stand here before you. I thank you so much for honoring my father. Thank you for the example that you set for me. And thank you for showing me how to set the example for those to come. Have a great evening.
Well, there's no crying in baseball, but clearly there is in Paige. So, and y'all, you know she's young because her notes were on an iPhone. I'm just saying. Thank you all very much for being with us for this very special evening. This was a record evening for Paige, and for many of us. This is the first time at Paige that both of these awards have been given to Black professionals. And that's just not a small undertaking. It is really, really amazing. And I thank this entire organization. And we owe a huge thanks to our leader, Roger Bolton, as well. So,